Guten Tag and welcome to PA Dutch 101. This is video 38 in our series. This is a vocabulary and skills building video, and it will be covering the topic of giving and asking directions. Seeing that we just got done talking about the command forms, one place in everyday life where you use the command forms is when giving directions. Someone stops in the street and says, "Excuse me, can you tell me where such and such place is?" You can then tell them how to get there using the command forms. So that's why I have this video coming directly after our lesson on command forms. The word for directions in Dutch is die Richtung. So we're going to start with that and get right into it. When asking for directions, let's start with that. Imagine you're driving around looking at hex signs and you get into a part of the state that you aren't very familiar with and you want to ask directions. Maybe where the closest restaurant is or where a place is to get gas. We can now ask that in Dutch. So, when asking for directions in Pennsylvania Dutch, use the following questions. It depends on what you're saying. Here's the first question. Wie kom ich zu blank? Now in the blank you would fill in the place that you're wanting to go to. A restaurant, a gas station, and we covered in a previous video places in a town. So you can access that video to look up those words if you forgot them. Or if you know the place, the name of a place, for example, how do I get to Smithville Diner? You can just fill in the blank with that. Wie komm ich zu? Wie komm ich zu? And that is, how do I get to whatever place? Another question you could ask is simply, where is such and such a place? Wo ist? Wo ist? Okay? Wo ist? So those are the two main questions we use when asking for directions. One more, and if we want to be polite, this is building off of these other two. Kannst du mir sagen, wo blank ist? Kannst du mir sagen, wo blank ist? Here we're saying, can you tell me? Now, we have the comma, and why the verb is at the end is because wo is acting like a conjunction, and we're going to get to that in a future video here coming up, and it forces the verb to the end. Kannst du mir sagen, wo Essplatz is, where a restaurant is. Okay, so that's just being a little bit more nice, polite. Kannst du mir sagen? Okay? So 3 ways of asking for directions. Now, if you're on the other end of that conversation and you're giving directions in Pennsylvania Dutch, we are going to, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, use the command forms. If you don't remember how to do them, please check video 37 in the series. Okay? A couple ways. Remember, if we're using commands, we always want to start with our verb first. Okay? Here's an example. You want to tell someone to turn right on Elm Street, and this is the phrase we're going to use if you're telling them to turn right or left. We'll just change one word. So to turn right, dreh mal rechts auf der Elmstraße. For example, Elm Street in this one. Dreh mal rechts auf der Elmstraße. Dreh mal rechts auf der Elmstraße. Now, the only thing we'd need to change if we were saying to turn left, instead of rechts, we'd say links, L-I-N-K-S, links. So dreh mal rechts or dreh mal links. Okay? So that's to turn. If you want to say, hey, go straight ahead or go down this road, for example, we're going to use the verb geh, which we've had before. Again, we're going to start with it. Geh mal grad bis zur Post Office. For example, go straight ahead until the post office. Geh mal grad bis zur Post Office. Geh mal grad bis zur Post Office. Again, there's a previous video, I don't remember the number off the top of my head, where we talked about words like mal. Mal is one of those emphasis words, so if you're wondering why that's there, check out the video and lesson entitled Words for Emphasis or Emphasis Words, and that'll touch upon why we're using mal here. So, that was to turn and to go straight ahead. Here are some other terms when giving or asking for directions that you'll probably use. So we already covered geh, to go, and drehen is to turn. Those are our 2 big verbs, to go and to turn. Our directions, so rechts is right, links is left. Rechts links. Now, talking about location then, maybe you're telling someone, okay, go down this street, and the place you're looking for is behind the fire company, for example. And we've had both these words before in our prepositions, one of our preposition videos. Hinnig is behind, neighbor is next to. Just saw this in the previous slide. Straight ahead, grad. And on the corner, uf dem Eck. If we're saying something is across from something, über von. And remember that after this phrase, whatever you're putting behind it, across from the restaurant, von is a dative preposition, so don't forget that in that case the restaurant would have to be in the dative. Okay, we got a lot of stuff at play here now as we're getting farther into the series. Net weit weg. Not far away. Now I'm also going to draw your attention to this word, weg, W-E-G. Depending on where you might get the opportunity to read Pennsylvania Dutch or see Pennsylvania Dutch in the written form, you will sometimes see this word spelled W-E-C-K. So both spellings are acceptable. It does make more of a K sound at the end, weg, net weit weg. So I understand why people spell it C-K, but I want you to also realize that it is acceptable to spell it with a G as well. And then finally, on such and such street, if you want to say, oh, well, the bakery's on Peach Street, we use the phrase in der, fill in the blank, with the English word for the street. I guess you could translate it, for example, if it was on Peach Street, in der Pfirsichstraße, but most times we would just keep the name of the actual street in English. So in der blank Straße on such and such street. Okay. Now, a good way to practice giving and asking directions that I do a lot with my students is that I have them draw a map of a fictitious town, or they could base it off of the town they live in. Basic, simple drawing, a bunch of streets, they label all the streets, and then they put places found within a town on the map. There's a church, there's a school, there's a fire company, there's a police office, town hall, and then people's houses. And then what I do is I have them partner up, and if I drew my map and my partner's Billy, Billy looks at my map that he's never seen before, and then I ask him, how do I get from my house to the church? And then Billy would walk through the map, essentially telling me how to go. Go straight ahead here, turn left here. It's a good practice. What you can do, if you're the only one in your house learning Pennsylvania Dutch, do the same thing. Draw a map of a town. Find someone in your house that's willing to work with you, and they don't have to be able to speak Pennsylvania Dutch. Give them the map and tell them to come up with 3 situations for you to practice. Starting in one location, ending in another. And then you, as practice, walk your way through the map. It's a good way. Speaking especially, getting that out there so you can speak. Okay? So that's one really good way of practicing. And that's basically what I just said. Then with a partner, ask them, directions. Another thing, of course, with the internet, just open Google Maps, zoom in on a town there, you already have a map made up for you, and practice giving and asking directions yourself. Okay? So, you never know when you're going to be in a situation where someone might stop and ask you for directions, or if you need to give directions. So it's good skills to have. It's a good way to build vocabulary as well. So, and practice commands all at the same time. So that's it. So we covered how to ask for directions, how to give directions, a review kind of the command forms, because when you're giving directions you have to form them in the commands. There's a lot at play here, especially with prepositions and some of those phrases, so you got to think about that as well. So get out there and practice this, find somebody to practice with, and bis die nächste Video, mach's gut und schwätz Deutsch.